words come from Psalm 121, meaning a song for ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Today we grieve in a world that is darkened by her absence. Yet at the same time, we are here to celebrate the light that Florence brought into our lives. We will remember and celebrate all of the goodness she brought into each of your lives and all the ways she will continue to live on in your memory as we gather together to mourn this loss. We join together to lovingly remember Florence's 96 years of life. This Pittsburgh-born woman taught us so much about life, the meaning of family, and the true meaning of dedication. I'm honored to be with you today as we gather together to fulfill two mitzvot, two primary obligations in Jewish tradition. First, the mitzvah of kavod hamet, to honor and remember the life of Florence Faber. And the second, nichum avelum, to comfort her family, especially her beloved children, Deborah and her husband Stanley, Mitchell and Richard and his wife Melissa, as well as her 5 beloved grandchildren, Brandon, Lawrence, Madeline, Emily, and Sam, and many other family members and friends who grieve this loss, whether they are here in this room with us or not. We will perform this holy task by turning to words of scripture and prayer, and by devoting these moments of quiet reflection to the sacred duty of memory. Today is the first day of a journey that is profoundly changed by her absence, which we feel so profoundly. But it is also profoundly informed by her spirit and gifts. And we begin with words of Psalms. This excerpt is from Psalm 144. Adonai ma'adam v'teidaehu. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning shoots up, renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood where we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright, they shall have peace. Adonai, you redeem the souls of your servants, and none who trust in you shall be desolate. It is impossible to speak about Florence without mentioning her love of her family. Without question, her children, and especially her grandchildren, are the lights of her life. Through these words from Proverbs, we acknowledge our appreciation for this Eshet Chayil, this woman of strength and courage, Florence Faber. Eshet Chayil mihimtza, a mother of generations, a woman of valor. She is precious in the gifts that she has given to our family. Her children have found trust and truth in these gifts. We follow in patterns that she taught. She's robed in strength and dignity, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. We benefit and learn from her wisdom. May she always be credited from the fruit of her labor and achievements. May she live on in glory. We'll now hear a few words from one of Florence's children, Rich Faber, who will share his reflections of our dearly beloved Florence.
Thank you all for being here. It means so much to my family that you're here. I have 2 poems I want to read to you that speak to Mom and how she lived her life. First one is from The Giving Tree. You might be familiar with that. But it's about a tree and a little boy and how they grew up together. And when we talk now, the tree is very old. In fact, it's been cut down. And the boy is also very old. After a long time, the boy came back again. I'm sorry, boy, said the tree. I have nothing to give you. My apples are gone. My teeth are weak for apples, said the boy. My branches are gone, said the tree. You cannot swing on them. I am too old to swing on branches, said the boy. My trunk is gone. You cannot climb. I'm too tired to climb, said the boy. I'm sorry, said the tree. I wish I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I'm an old stump. I'm sorry. I don't need very much now, said the boy. Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I'm very tired. Well, said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could. Well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down. Sit down and rest. The boy did, and the tree was happy. Next poem is by Carl Sandburg from 1916. It's called The Junk Man. I'm glad God saw death and gave death a job of taking care of all who were tired of living. When all the wheels in the clock were worn and slow and their connections loose, and the clock goes on ticking and telling the wrong time, hour for hour, and the people around the house joke about what a bum clock it is. How glad the clock is when the big junk man comes and drives his wagon up to the house and puts his arms around the clock and says, "You don't belong here. You gotta come along with me." How glad the clock is then when he feels the arms of the junk man close around it and carry it away. I'd like now to bring up her granddaughter, Emily.
Hello. Thank you again for being here today. These words are a combination of what my sister wanted to express. She can't be here, unfortunately, and myself. After Grammy had her stroke around 13 years ago, she largely lost the ability to speak. So we adapted. We learned to read her facial expressions, the changes in tonality as she spoke sounds, her hand gestures, and being the strong woman that she was, she would make known her disapproval, her appreciation, her curiosity, her skepticism. We learned to read those cues. Out of this new stage in communication with her, two interesting developments arose. The first was that although Grammy couldn't verbalize complete words, she was able to sing. Clear as day, she could sing, "Happy birthday to you," and we'd hear Grammy again. The second development during this time was that Grammy was able to speak sentiments that came naturally to her, those that were evoked by pure sentiment. The most common words that she could say were, "Hi," "Beautiful," and "I love you." When we came to visit her in the nursing home, she'd say, "Hi," and then she'd touch my face and say, "Beautiful." And you knew that when she said, "I love you," that it was coming from the purest voice it could. Sorry. I had the privilege of experiencing that pure love that she had for her family. Creamy tended to Madeline in New Jersey when she was born, and then when I was born, she came to Memphis to take care of me too. And when Sam came along, she showed him the same love and care she did for all of her grandchildren. Grammy passed her devotion to her family and her work ethic onto her children. When we were with her in her final days in the hospital, Dad held her hands and thanked her busy fingers that worked quickly as a receptionist to provide for Dad, Mitch, and Debbie, and with love to take care of her grandchildren, especially when it came to cooking and baking. Back then, one of the ways she communicated her love was through food, especially sweets. She always had candy for us, milkshakes, peanut butter balls waiting after school. Homemade mashed potatoes and peas were a staple in the Faber household. She was also fiercely protective, especially when it came to going outside. From the months of November to May, we had to be stuffed into a winter jacket with gloves and a hat in order to play in the backyard. And I remember Dad telling me a story that when they were living in Pittsburgh, that there was, and on her way to work, there was a boy who would ride the bus, and she noticed that as winter came, he didn't have a coat. And so, where she was, she made sure he got a coat, and every year, apparently for years afterwards, she would send a coat up to that boy in Pittsburgh until one year it came back, I guess changed address or something.
But she loved to spoil us, and even and especially against my parents' wishes. When my parents were trying to wean me off of pacifiers, Grammy bought half a dozen and hid them around the house so I would never lack. She would shake Madeline out of bed early, not to get a head start for school, but so that she and Madeline could watch Pokemon cartoons in her room together. Sam got away with everything by the time he came around, so her stealthy actions were less needed. Madeline says that we'll always remember a plate of chocolate-covered peanut butter bites in the fridge or a rack of homemade donuts cooling when we got home from school. Grammy loved to make us happy, and we'll remember her that way, smiling and covered in powdered sugar. She was at every opening night of our plays, every dance, every piano recital. Even after her stroke and once she was in a wheelchair, we would bring her to the piano in our house and I'd play for her again. And at the end of every song, she'd clap, just as if it were one of my recitals. And then when she couldn't come to the house as frequently as before, I'd record the songs on my phone and play them for her at the nursing home. And she would smile and say, "Beautiful." To Granny, "Hi, you're beautiful. We love you." Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your poetry and the words from your heart. I'm sure Grammy would also say that they were beautiful and that she loved you as well for sharing them. In Jewish tradition, Psalm 23 is famous and often shared at funerals, not because it provides a rhyme or a reason to the mystery of love and loss, but rather because it reassures us that all human beings, even King David, walk through dark valleys where we feel unsure of our footing, unsure of what comes next. And it promises that there is another side, a brighter side, and that when we're walking through difficult times, God walks with us. I would now like to invite Rabbi A.B. Schachter-Gampel, Director of Spiritual Care from Memphis Jewish Home and Rehab, to lead us in the Hebrew of the 23rd Psalm that recognizes that while we're in a dark place this time, we must continue to seek out and bring light, as Florence often did. He will read the prayer, the psalm in Hebrew, and then we will read it together in English.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנותשה ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני. נפשי ישובב ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי אלך בגיא צלמוות לא אירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי, תשענת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Join with me in English on your sheets in front of you. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
The poem says, "The mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is far too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit Florence gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of her light and her warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. It is Florence's gifts of spirit we have come to remember today. And so I invite you now all to pause for a few moments of silent prayer and reflection as we remember her. I often like to share at funerals the reminder that just as there are no words for love, there are also no words for death. There's only pain and darkness and sorrow. There's the silence of peering deeply into the power of life and love and loss. And we feel that power right now, this afternoon. The power of life, the power of love, and the power of loss. As we offer our silent presence to one another. We are here because of our love for each other, for our love of this family, and for our love of Florence. One of the things that death teaches us is not only the power of life, but also the power of memory, and that is our duty from here on out. Only human beings have the gift of memory. We are unique in our ability to recall the past. We can and should remember Florence, and there will no doubt be many moments when we feel her presence around us. That moment when you forget your coat November through May. You'll certainly feel her. From the stories shared with me and the memories that you've heard today, 3 defining qualities stood out. She was dedicated, she was determined, and she was a giver. Florence was dedicated. It almost seems appropriate that we would lose Florence during Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. The word Hanukkah literally means dedication, and that was a message that Florence took seriously. Without a doubt, she was dedicated to her family when she was raising her children and when she was raising her grandchildren. She had a warmth about her and could make anyone feel at home with her peanut butter balls. Her grandchildren were definitely the lights of her life, if that has not become clear today. She showed her dedication to each of them, and oftentimes their friends too, through the love she gave, but perhaps more importantly, through the food she made. Florence showed up. Whether it was a grandchild recital, a play, or just a free afternoon, she was there. Florence was also determined. Life, as it has a tendency to do, through a series of ups and downs at Florence. However, you may not have ever known it. She took each challenge as it came, determined to overcome them with as much grace and also with some laughter if possible. Florence just found a way to work harder. There was no mountain too high, no valley too low. It was just the current terrain she was in, and she would do whatever she needed to do to get to where she needed to go, and she'd make sure her family was coming with her. And you better believe she was going to do it while wearing lipstick. Florence was a giver. She was the person you could count on to be there for you. When her children were young, she helped support her neighbors, not just her children, and the children of her neighbors, many of whom were single mothers just trying to make ends meet, trying to make it through day to day. No matter how much was on her own plate, she always seemed to be able to help others carry their burdens. When her parents needed caring for, as Emily mentioned, it was no question Florence was moving back to Pittsburgh to care for them. When Madeline was born, it was no question Florence was moving to New Jersey. And then when it was Emily's turn to enter the world, it was no question she was coming with them to Memphis. Sam was just icing on the cake, and she didn't have to move for that one. A story was told, as Emily shared as well, of a young boy she met on a city bus in Pittsburgh. She took the time to notice this stranger, this young boy, did not have a coat. Now we know from the story shared, it may have been 60 degrees that day, and she just decided he really should have had a coat, but who knows? But year after year, the family knew they were sending a coat to a boy in Pittsburgh. Even after her stroke, her innate priority of caring for others did not diminish. Her caregivers at the Memphis Jewish Home and Rehab noted how attentive she was to her table mates at meals, always making sure they were eating enough. That is a theme that kept going through. I think it's fair to say that she left this earth better than how she found it. As we strive to remember her life and not her death, we will remember her love for this family as we reach out to support them during this dark time. And we'll continue to reminisce together about all of the memories shared with her, which I know we just heard the very beginnings of. Death, even at its worst, it said, is only perfect sleep. Florence's soul is with God, she is at rest, she is at peace. And somehow now, too, we must make peace with her death, at least enough to live, and share the values that she taught us. This unforgettable woman showed us through her actions what someone can accomplish when they bring dedication, determination, and a loving heart to each day. Thank you, Florence, for teaching us that one of the most important things we can do in life is to show up for those we love, that sharing love with another is a sacred duty, and for reminding us that our duty here on earth is to leave at least one corner of it better than we found it. And thank you, God, for sharing Florence Faber with us. In Jewish tradition, the penultimate act of saying goodbye to someone is the rendering of El Malei Rachamim, a cry to God full of mercy to guard the precious soul of our loved one, to bind them in the bonds of eternal life and to grant everlasting peace. I will read the prayer's English translation and then chant it in Hebrew. Following this prayer, we will continue our service graveside. May these ancient words bring us comfort as they are chanted. May visions and memories of the best moments you shared with Florence be flashing in your minds and in your hearts. I ask that everyone please rise. Compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Florence Faber, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamrolim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Atorim, Kizahar Harakia Mazhirim, Ed Nishmat Florence Faber Shehalcha La'olama, Ve'al Harachamim Yastireha, B'seter Kenafav Le'olamim, Ve'yitzror B'tzror HaChaim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach B'shalom Al Mishkava, V'nomar Amen. I'd like to invite the pallbearers to approach the casket and continue our service graveside in just a moment.